Oh, good morning. Not quite 7 o'clock yet. And I'm sitting out on my deck, of course. Harcourt vanilla cream. McCollin's, I think, is the vanilla cream. I had Stanwell vanilla in it, and then I changed it over to vanilla cream just because I'm keeping vanilla in that particular jar. It's that country wine glass. So the question was, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? Well, like all little girls, I wanted to be a princess and a queen. I didn't need a kingdom or a king. I just wanted to be a princess and then, grow into a queen. And I did that. All of us girls was given the opportunity to become princesses by my dad. And we all grew into queens in our own right. Now, I know if I was a guy, that would mean a whole different thing, but, my dad believed in letting us girls have our fantasies, and he promoted our fantasies. My mom did too, but my dad is the one that would go out there and hide things in little holes in the ground and say that they were troll treasure troves and stuff like that. So my dad was a bit of a romantic nonsense kind of guy, and I'm sure that's why my mom loved him so much, and that's probably why we all loved him, because he played into our little fantasies and stuff, and that's a good thing for a daddy to do. It's good for a daddy to sit down, and my bowl's getting a little warm because I'm about done with it. It's good for a dad to sit down and have a tea party with a little girl, because I can guarantee you that's the things that they remember. They don't remember that you worked hard to put them through school, or that you bought them a better coat than what they would have had, or anything like that. What's going to be the memory for any little girl is the time that Daddy spent with them. So, my dad let us all become princesses and queens. But as I was older, there was we were in the space program. I can remember, I'm old, and you guys have no idea of the technology that has changed in my lifetime. So I wanted to be an astronaut. We were entering into the space program, and the astronauts were coming on, and there was a woman by the name of Wally. Captain Wally, and if you don't know who she is, then I advise you all to Google her, because she was one of the most important women in my opinion, that has been grossly overlooked. She was on the center cover of Time or Look. I can't remember which it was, maybe even Life back then, but I had taken her picture off the magazine and actually glued it to my wall where I could see it from my bed and my desk. Of course, I got in trouble for it, but then we went and had to get another one, had to go buy another magazine, and I had to put it in a picture frame, and had it for a long time. And that's one of those things that kind of has disappeared in the travels and in the fire. I don't have that anymore, which is kind of a shame, because it was a neat, nice picture. Captain Wally, thing is I idolized her all through my life, and I had an antique store downtown here in Leavenworth, and the woman that owned the building, her name was Renee Adams. Well, she lived above the shop, a really nice apartment, because the lofts downtown are phenomenal. I know I did a video on one, so I'm sure you've seen some of them. But Renee's girlfriend had company coming in, and lo and behold, a Bronco pulls up, and these two women get out, two older women. One had white hair, just snow white hair, and when I looked at her, I knew who she was. And I go out, Captain Wally. Well, here is a 60-year-old woman out there, yelling in the street, Captain Wally. Well, the woman was nice enough to talk to me for a little while, and she left me, she sent me photographs that she had signed and stuff like that, and I'll look it up and maybe show you guys. But I was so amazed that she looked good. Oh gosh, she looked so good, and she, you know, she was quite a bit older than me. She was probably in her 80s. Oh, I doubt if she's that old, but man, she was the woman I wanted to be. I wanted to be Captain Wally, and so I actually got to meet my idol. I've gotten to meet a couple of my idols. I got to meet her, just a fluke meeting. You know, what's the chances of you renting from a woman whose girlfriend knows your idol? You know, that's how networking works, I guess. But I also got to meet Isaac Asimov at a Comic Con. It was a Star Trek con, not comic, it was Star Trek. And I got to meet him, and we were talking about many years ago, because I was still very young. Well, Star Trek was a big deal then. And I got to meet him, but more important than just his Star Trek and his books that you know on space, he is another guy you need to look up. He was the person I read about math, history. He could do things with words that few people could do. He knew, in order to write those space stories, he knew this. He had books on astronomy. His mathematic books are just the ones that, like I say, I poured over his books. I had tons of his books. He even had dirty limericks. I mean, the man was just astonishing. And when I finally met him, and by the time I did meet him, he had fuzzy hair and was young still too, but I was much younger. And I guess I was in my 20s probably. But when I met him, all I could do was stutter. You know, I couldn't get a word out. I kept trying, and he just patted me on the shoulder and signed my little book and sent me on my way. But it's very odd when you meet your idols, because you think you know them. I mean, you've been following them, so you have a feeling of a little bit of an inner knowledge, or a little bit of a friendship, or you know what I'm talking about. You feel you have that little bit of connection, and then you meet them, and they don't know who you are, and you have so much knowledge of them that you think somewhere in the back of your mind, I don't know why you think this, but for some reason you think you've formed a relationship with them, and they don't know you. But oh gosh, that was one of those really neat nights in my life, was to meet him and to meet her. So that's what I wanted to be when I was young, is I wanted to be an astronaut. But along with being an astronaut, you know, before I wanted to be an astronaut, I wanted to be my aunt worked for South Bell in Kentucky. She was an operator. And she took me to work one day with her, and we were down there. And once again, we're talking about the advancement of technology that you guys have no idea. She worked at a switchboard, and I'm only maybe 7 or 8. Yeah, I wasn't 10 yet. She worked at a switchboard, and honest to gosh, back in those days, she had this big heavy headset, but she had to connect with these wires in order for the communication. It was not, it was really one of those with the wires and the thing, and it was just so neat to, so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a telephone operator, which was more likely to happen than me being an astronaut. But I never wanted to be Susie Homemaker. Still not. Still don't want to be Susie Homemaker. I keep waiting for the house cleaning fairy to come, but they won't come unless you pay them. But that was the question. Oh, I did tell you this was my harcourt. You know, just a nice harcourt. This is Harry. Tom, Dick, and Harry. This is Harry of the Harry group. And I was smoking some McClellan vanilla cream in there. For the most part, I don't like too much casing on my tobacco, but I like vanilla. You know, I think it's pretty neat. I was never fond of cherry. Cherry flavors always seem to leave that little bit of medicinal flavor in my mouth, but I don't think it's necessarily really the flavor it's leaving. It's the memory of the flavor of, you know, when we were growing up, cherry was the only flavor there was for medication. Pink cherry antibiotics or cherry life cough drops and stuff. Everything was cherry. I wanted to be an astronaut until in the space program that was going on. I really thought I still stood a chance, even when I was in high school, until we sent up a civilian, first civilian we sent up. And what did we do to her? We blew her up. So at that point, they were saying no civilians will be on NASA flights ever again. And so I kind of knew that I would never make it into the space program because I was never an athletic person. I'm okay, I just wasn't a great athletic person. And so I knew I would never get there through NASA. But I'd hoped I could have been a civilian going. It's odd how dreams die too, you know. All of our once as a child, as we grow up, they kind of die a rather peaceful death for the most part. We outgrow them, or we realize that they are unattainable, or if we're unlucky enough, someone has changed our minds about that without us fulfilling our own version of it. And I did get to do a little bit in as far as flying and stuff like that's concerned. I'm emptying out my pipe on the ground. That's one of the nice things about my house. The wind will come through here and just blow us away, but I like my outside. I like sitting around on my deck or on my front porch. And that's, I think, my quiet time and where I like. When I was in college, I got a chance to go to Alaska and drop off dynamite for the pipeline. And so I got to jump from a plane and take a parachute jump. And then I got to, in the training, you had to take a parachute jump. And then I got to go to Alaska for 3 months and fly around on those planes for quite a while. I did not pilot them. I don't want you to guys think I'm trying to say I'm more than I was. All I was in the 70s, there was the push for women equality. We've taken a lot of steps backwards, but for the most part, there was this push on for anytime the government awarded a contract, the government said so many had to be minorities. And so I got to go to Alaska because there was a push for that contract had to have women with the contract also. So 3 women and 13 men lived in a Quonset hut in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. And all I did was I sat behind the pilot in a little jump chair. You know, you folded it down from the front seat. And I just checked off stuff as they were pushing out the dynamite. I made sure that the dynamite didn't get dropped at the same place that the blasting caps did. And then I got to drop off the dye markers. And that was kind of neat because so it was kind of neat to do that summer. I came back and didn't have to pay for my junior and senior year in college because that was what the trade-off was. I got to, if I would work for them for 3 months, they paid my junior and senior year in college. And so I came out ahead on that. I became an accountant. I originally wanted to be a teacher, and then I went and taught for 1 semester. In my junior year, you had to do some student teaching, and I had advanced enough that they went ahead and they put me into a school for part of the day. After I did a semester of teaching, I came back and I said, I'll be anything except a teacher. And since I was already minoring in accounting, I went ahead and became an accountant. And that's a very good life. I mean, I always urge anybody who's going to college to go ahead and take accounting as their secondary, because the world can fall, but you're still going to have an accountant to account for it. So I've always been very steady work. you know, I was always kind of responsible in my work ethics, but then in my real life, my life, I have had such a good life, and so anything I wanted to be as a child, I fulfilled in a certain way. I couldn't become an astronaut, but I could get on a plane, and I could take a parachute jump, and I won't ever do that again either. So we get on the plane. This is, I'm sorry, this VR is always, all of my videos take too long. I'm sorry, because I get off subject. But got up on a plane. There was a bunch of us that got on to take our, I'd already done a jump line. So back then, they didn't do the tandem jumping. Back then, there again, it has to do with the technology. We jumped from that plane on a ripcord. I mean, when you got so far away from the plane, it automatically ripped your parachute. And talk about scared. I was scared. I peed on myself all the way down. And all the way down, I kept praying, you know, God, if you get me out of this, I will never do anything stupid like this again. I swear, if you let me live through this. And you only had time for 700 or 800 prayers as you're going down. It's pretty quick, you know. But I was lucky enough I lived through it. And then, truthfully, I'd like to say I never did anything stupid again. But, you know, usually I didn't know it was stupid until after I did it. So I did a lot of other dangerous, silly things, but that's because I didn't know it until afterwards how bad that was. But so that's who I wanted to be when I was going to grow up. I wanted to be a princess, and I was. And then I wanted to be an astronaut, and I didn't get to be an astronaut, but I got to meet my hero astronaut. And then I wanted to be a teacher, and I found out I didn't want to be a teacher. Oh, even better than that, which you guys are going to laugh at probably, but when I went to college, I went to St. Mary's Xavier, which is a nun preparatory school. And so I actually thought I wanted to be a nun for a few years. Of course, the Mother Superior, she said it's a false calling and get your ass out of here. No, she didn't. What she said was it was a false calling, and that I thought I wanted to be a nun because it seemed like it was kind of a romantic notion. We were allowed to choose our religions as we were growing up, and so I chose to become a Catholic. My dad was Catholic, and so I chose to become a Catholic with my dad. So happy, happy, joy, joy, you know I'm watching you.